Good morning, History 126. This is Professor Henshaw, and I wanted to give you some background information on the question of political vision and where Ta-Nehisi Coates fits into the discussion that we've been talking about in terms of Smithian versus FDRian, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, visions of politics or the role of government and for the vision for society. So I'm imagining that most of you didn't read the preface or the materials before the case for reparations, which is fine. But in part, he is talking about his own experience. So it's interesting and it's relevant to what we're going to be discussing and what I want you to be thinking about. So I thought I would just, in part, kind of lead you through that. He in part talks about how he writes for The Atlantic, which is one of the oldest and most respected kind of public intellectual magazines in American life. It's one that published Mark Twain, it published Abraham Lincoln, it had Theodore Roosevelt, and so there's a sense, as he talks about in this Notes from the Sixth Year, that ideas and perspectives put forward in The Atlantic are more important, even if they're not new, than something that appeared somewhere else. And he both kind of acknowledges the power of that and thinks that that is wrong, but nonetheless he kind of it's relevant to this discussion because until he wrote this article, there really was not any discussion at all about reparations amongst whites in the United States, and or at least outside of academic circles. He talks about, on page 156, he said basically that the support for racial discrimination over the such a long period of time in American life had to be, in his view, based in a vision of the world. In other words, it was a political philosophy, not simply something that they didn't notice. He also discusses his the kind of scholarship that this article or this piece is based on, such as Kenneth Jackson's Crabgrass Frontier and Ira Katznelson's When Affirmative Action Was White, which are extremely good academic works. And so in that sense, he's trying to kind of do what any scholar does, which is make his sources public. On page 159, this is where he talks about why reparations are going to be so hard even to discuss. And he said the implications, and by which he means the implications of reparations, could not be confined to the presumably narrow realm of race. What would it mean for American foreign policy, so often rooted in its image as the oldest enlightened republic and pioneer of the free world, to forthrightly note that freedom and enlightenment were only made possible through a plunder that stretched from the country's prehistory up to living memory? For Americans, the hardest part of paying reparations would not be the outlay of money. It would be acknowledging that their most cherished myth was not real. All right, so we will discuss many of these ideas and terms in class, but I wanted to make sure that you kind of had that background, and it also kind of ties into the earlier video that I'm posting today, but I recorded on Monday about political philosophy. Thank you.